Welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 429, and today's date is July 31st, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Economy is in Trouble, and the Central Bankers have prepared a special event to cover it up. And we can see right now they came out yesterday with this absolutely ridiculous GDP number at 4%. Of course, that means we had a 6.1% gain, and this just does not make sense. Now, we can see today the markets have pretty much collapsed on itself. Now, you would think with all this great news and the economy improving, we would see better results in the market. But what we're seeing is the actual opposite at this time. We can see when we look across the world, the flashpoints for war is getting worse. Things are starting to really build up. We see in the Middle East, Libya now is pretty much taking over the country. A lot of countries are evacuating their government officials because they realize the government is falling. We see this spreading to Yemen. We see in the Ukraine, the government up there is collapsing. They are pretty much, the whole economy actually is just falling apart, and we can see the IMF is holding back and giving them any more money. We have to see if the United States is going to come through and give them a couple mil just to hold them over. And we can see right now they will do anything and everything to continually push their agenda in Ukraine. They're continually placing sanctions on Russia. They're continually blaming Russia. We see in the Middle East they are using the Islamic State to completely create chaos within the area, and this is all part of their plan, and we know their goal is always the same. Their goal is to get into Syria and Iran. That has not changed. Their tactics might have changed. They might have stepped back and said, okay, let's reassess the issue. We need another way. We've been trying to get into Syria for quite a long time with this civil war. It's not working. Let's see what else we can do. They tried the chemical attacks. That didn't work. Now they're into the next phase. They're using the Islamic State, and they'll be using other tactics to bring us to war. And we can see they are trying everything they possibly can. Why? Because the economy is falling apart. It is collapsing. It cannot be maintained. And there's a lot of warnings out there now. A lot of CEOs and investment financial hedge fund managers coming out saying, yes, it looks like we are headed towards a stock market crash. And we can see from everything that happened in the previous times back in 2008 and further back, we know every time they try to push a recovery or everything is fine and they continually throw that in our face, we know the opposite is actually happening. Now let's get into the economic collapse news. Now what are we seeing here? Well, we are seeing now that Argentina is in selective default by Standard & Poor's. And we have to understand, if we look back, we know that Argentina and the bondholders, both of them were supposed to attend a meeting and nobody showed up. And we also have to understand Argentina has been dealing with the BRIC nations. It looks like they want to join the BRICS. They're also dealing with China. China is pumping billions into their infrastructure, also giving them loans. So they might be looking away at this point and looking towards the BRICS and China and stepping away from the private Western central bankers and all those other people that they owe. Now, in Bulgaria, what we're seeing is Moody's has cut Bulgarian corporate deposit rating. Now, why did they do this? We understand that Bulgaria had a trouble bank, and as soon as this happened, people started to make a run on the banking system, and right now they're not releasing any of the depositors' funds. And this is the reason why Moody stepped in and said, listen, we're going to downgrade you, because what prompted this was the increased risk of losses to depositors given the uncertainty with regards to when they will regain access to their deposits. So we can see right now these people can't even get their money. Of course, one day they woke up and all of a sudden the banks were shut down, they couldn't get their money, and people ran to the bank to try to get them out. The same thing happened in Cyprus, and we can see the same thing happen here in the United States. Now we can see the employment claims, the initial claims, completely missed expectations, and what we're seeing right now is, if we remember, we've had a lot of layoffs in the beginning of this year, and many times when these are high-paying jobs, which they were in a lot of the companies. They were in Dell, Sony, Barclays, RBS. A lot of people get severance packages, and they last anywhere from, depending on how long you worked for the company, from 3 months, 6 months, or even up to 1 year. But we're seeing this number start to tick up, and they were expecting about a 280,000 print, and it increased to about 302. So it really skyrocketed this time, and it really increased. And what else are we seeing here? Well, we're seeing layoffs increasing. U.S. employers plan to cut nearly 50,000 positions in July. This is coming from Challenger Gray and Christmas, which reported this on Thursday. This is pretty much netting about 50% more job cuts than in the prior month. To date right now, since the beginning of this year, we've had about 292,000 job cuts, and more are on the way. And like I said, as we move into the late summer and into fall, this number is really going to pick up speed. We're going to see many, many companies start to lay off people. Now, if the stock market does crash in October, of course, the Fed told us that they're going to be exiting the stimulus program. We understand back in 1929, 1987, 2008, the stock market has crashed in October. This will send a signal to pretty much every single company that the economy is dead, and they will be laying off people in masses. I mean, it will just be crazy, and people will be wondering what is going on. But I really, truly do believe that the Fed, the United States government, will not let this happen this time. I think they're planning on an event that will occur pretty much at the same time, because they will need to blame this on another country. There is no more bailouts. There's no way to go to Congress and ask for more money. Yes, they can lock down the banks and do bail-ins, but you have to remember, they would be too people would blame them. They would blame the government, and they would blame the Federal Reserve, because they're the ones who caused this. So they want this to look like it's coming from another area. And this will allow them to say, hey, we were pretty much making the economy better. It was recovering. It looked great. And then all of a sudden this happened. Now, the Chicago PMI has collapsed to 13-month lows. Chicago PMI plunged from 62.6 to 52.6. This is the biggest miss on record. A monthly fall of this magnitude has not been seen since October of 2008. And here's the breakdown of what happened here. New orders fell compared to last month. Inventories fell compared to last month. Production fell compared to last month. Order backlogs fell compared to last month, and the surprise fall in the Chicago Business Barometer in July, following a strong second quarter, naturally raises questions about the sustainability of the recovery. And we can see right now there really is no recovery. These numbers are completely made up. They're manipulated. It's to convince the everyday American person that we are in a strong recovery. Everything is going well. They did this back in 2008. They tried to convince everyone that everything is fine. One day we woke up, the stock market was plunging. Employees in Lehman Brothers were carrying boxes outside, and all of a sudden, businesses all over the United States started laying off tons of people. People were abandoning their houses. Foreclosures skyrocketed. It was crazy, and 38% of the people lost their wealth at this time. And we can see this time it's going to be much, much different, because they've already lost their wealth. Most of the people have no job or are underemployed. So we can see, and most of the people don't even own their homes anymore. They're renting. So we can see right now, this time around, it is going to be much, much worse. Now, Fitch is warning that a jump in U.S. high-yield default rates looms. It is right there, looming on the horizon. And we can see that there is a potential bankruptcy filing from another struggling giant, Caesars Entertainment entertainment operating company would propel the trailing 12-month U.S. high-yield default rate to 3.4% from its June perch of 2.7%, according to Fitch Ratings. A high-yield credit is flashing a red signal, letting us know that there is absolutely something wrong. From 2007 to 2008, is the fact that the credit markets moved before the equity markets, and we're seeing this happen right now. Now, it looks like Russia and India are beginning their negotiations to pretty much bypass the dollar completely. And it seems like more and more countries are starting to do this. Russia discussed cooperation with Reserve Bank of India Executive Director. The punchline is India agreed to create a task group to work out a mechanism for using national currencies in settlements. And so another major bilateral arrangement is set up that completely bypasses the dollar. And we're seeing this happen more and more. We see the UK has done this. We see Canada has done this. We see New Zealand, Australia, Switzerland, North Korea, Syria, Iran, Russia, and many other countries. They're all doing it. They're protecting themselves. Now, we see now that from all these sanctions that are being placed on Russia, it is starting to hurt European and American businesses. They're already taking their toll on these businesses. Adidas said it's going to accelerate the closures of stores in Russia because of the sanctions that are being implemented on Russia. Volkswagen, they're reporting an 8% decline in sales in Russia in the first half of the year, blaming it on the sanctions. Siemens warned geopolitical tensions, including those in Ukraine, posed serious risks for Europe's growth this year and next. Metro, the Eurozone's second largest retailer, said events in Russia were creating risks for the group as it revealed sales had declined sharply in Ukraine. Erste Group, the third largest lender in emerging Europe, warned that turmoil could impact banks in Eastern Europe. The German Machinery Association lowered its forecast for growth in the industry this year, as it said the Russian situation was starting to affect bilateral trade and weigh on demand in important sales markets. So we can see already what they are doing is not helping. They're hurting Europe, they're hurting U.S. companies, they're hurting European companies, and this is not going well. This is going to hurt everything that they're trying to do here. And they understand this. They understand the economies are done. They understand the dollar is pretty much finished. They understand what they have left now is to provoke and start a war, to create an event, to blame on another nation, to blame on another group. There is no other way out. Yes, they're going to try to get into Syria. They're going to try to get into Iran. They're going to try to maintain control in the Middle East. And again, we have to remember who is on the other side: Russia and China. If they try or attempt to go into Syria, Russia and China will back Syria. If they try to do it to Iran, the same thing is going to happen. If they try to invade Libya, Yemen, Iraq, once again, Russia and China are going to be there. They've already set up the fleet in the Pacific. They've already set up the military assets in Europe. They are already in the Middle East. They are getting prepared for World War III, and this is why, going back a couple of years, they've been maneuvering military assets, building bases, setting up missile launchers. They've been doing this completely on purpose because they understand war will break out, and they're trying to provoke it, and they will do everything they possibly can to get this started. Now, the CDC issued a level 3 travel alert as the largest Ebola outbreak in history starts to spread. And we can see right now they have travel warnings in Liberia, in Guinea, and Sierra Leone, and they're saying that no one should be flying or going to these areas. And right now there's about 1,320 cases have occurred in 3 countries, and more than 725 people have died, making this the largest outbreak of Ebola in history. And right now 3 Americans have been infected. So we have to watch this very carefully. This is a very scary thing when a disease or a virus or anything is moving across and just killing people, and it is very scary. And what happens if Ebola comes to America and starts spreading? One of the first things that would happen would be for the CDC to issue a federal isolation or quarantine order. The following is what the CDC website says about what would happen under such an order. Quarantine is used to separate and restrict the movement of well persons who may have been exposed to a communicable disease to see if they become ill. Isolation and quarantine are used to protect the public by preventing exposure to infected persons or to persons who may be infected. So right now there is no vaccine for Ebola and there is no cure. The Department of Defense informed Congress that it has deployed biological diagnostic systems to National Guard support teams in all 50 states. Now, they deployed these kits and all these biological diagnostics to detect Ebola, but what's funny about this is the White House is out there and they say there is no indication of Ebola risk to U.S. whatsoever. So don't worry, everyone. Everything is fine, but we're giving the National Guard all these kits and we're spreading it across the United States just to make sure. So just be careful what you're doing. It's spread through like blood and fluid and things like that. So everyone needs to be a little bit cautious. Now with Obamacare, it looks like premiums are rising. In California, and I mentioned this in all different states here, healthcare insurance premiums for individuals in California rose between 22 and 88% in 2014, and they might go even higher. So this Affordable Care Act is really not affordable whatsoever. People are looking at this and they're saying, you know what, I am paying a lot of money. I'm getting absolutely no benefit, because you have to remember most of the plans have very high deductibles. You pay a monthly premium, and when you go to the doctor, you have to pay out of your pocket until you meet that deductible, and sometimes that deductible is $2,000, sometimes it's $5,000. It all depends on the plan, but you get no benefit. You just continually pay out, and you pay each month, and you're really receiving absolutely nothing for it. Now, if you decide not to take Obamacare, you have to pay a penalty. All this was done, it was created to create tax revenue for the government. It was not to give every single person a benefit using healthcare. If they truly wanted to do this and they wanted to give everyone great healthcare, there would be no penalties, there would be no taxes. You wouldn't have worked with the health insurance companies the way they did. It would be only to benefit people. But instead what they did was, listen, how can we make health insurance a blanket thing across the country? And what they did was they said, listen, if the young people can get into the system, they can support the older people. And what we'll have to do is we'll have to raise the rates for everyone, and if we can get everyone in, the whole thing will be supported. You'll get no benefits, but you'll be supported. Now, how can we get everyone in there? I know. Let's put a penalty on there, and this will help us bring in revenue. What else can we do? Let's put some taxes in here. So this way we can bring in even more revenue. And the insurance companies work with the government, and they came up with these terrible, awful packages, which they call the health benefits. Now, of course, the government officials said, well, we don't want that. We're exempting ourselves. We don't want any of this. We're keeping our own health insurance. The staffers in the government said, this is too expensive. We can't afford this. We can't take this. So Obama went out and said, you know what? You're exempt. The government will pay for it. So we can see right now, this is not to help the American people. And if it was truly to help the American people, the government officials and the president would have been on the front line at the computer saying, I just signed up. But we didn't see anything like that whatsoever, because they don't want it. And if they don't want it, I don't want it. And none of you should want it. Now, we understand that illegals are coming up from the Central America on the train called the Beast, which is a Kansas City corporation owns, and we understand that the Obama administration is now advertising down in that area. And what we're seeing is that the children coming up, and I said this many times before, are not children, but now we're getting a breakdown of the age groups, and they are roughly between 15 and 17, and some of them are even 22. And when I look at this and what would occur to me is that this age is perfect working age, It's also perfect to help Obamacare because this is the age group that he wanted in Obamacare to support the Obamacare system. It's also a great age to send them off to war once the war gets started. And we can see that this is absolutely perfect. They send them around the country. They have young people ready to go, ready to work at the low-paying jobs, ready to go right on to Obamacare with subsidies. And if war, and not, I shouldn't even say if, when war breaks out, these individuals are ready to fight. They have an army. And we can see that this fits right into all of their plans. Now, it looks like the CIA was caught in a complete lie. Anyone really surprised? They were spying on Senate computers. They lied about torture. They pretty much every time a government official gets and testifies in front of Congress, you can pretty much know it's a lie. And it always turns out that they were lying, or they hold back information, and it turns out that they knew about what was going on. And here's just another example how pretty much all our government officials and people who are working for the government who are spying on the American people and on the Senate are all lying about what they're really doing. And we can see firsthand from when the president comes out and said it's absolutely Russia who downed the Malaysian plane. Lie. Russia has been firing military shells into Ukraine. Lie. Russia is invading Ukraine. Lie. It's one lie after another. Now, it looks like Catalonia, which is in Spain, is looking to have a referendum and separate itself from Spain. Now, Spain is saying absolutely not. It's illegal. You can't do this. And the Catalan president said, you know what, we're doing it anyhow. We want an independent vote. We want to show you that we're going to be independent from Spain itself, and we'll have to see what happens in that situation. Now, Russia has said they have pretty much turned over all their information on the MH17 jet crash to the UN and the OSCE, and they have all their data, and they gave it to them. And Churkin was out there, and he was saying, well, I hope the other, which they're either talking about the United States or the puppet regime in Ukraine, will turn over their information instead of using accusations, lies, and everything else. And you can see that they realize that the United States and Ukraine are continually lying about the situation, and they're continually calling them on their lies. Now, it looks like Dutch and the Australian forensic team have reached the Malaysian Airlines crash site in eastern Ukraine for the first time. They've been trying to get there. Many days have passed because the puppet regime in Ukraine is continually firing on that location and will not let anyone in that area. Now, right now, the United Nations has no proof of Russia's alleged arms supplies to self-defense militias in the East Ukraine, Donetsk, and Lugansk regions. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said there is absolutely no proof, and they have found no evidence, and the United Nations have no firm evidence that Russia has been supplying the Ukrainian pro-Russian people any type of military arms. So here is another lie that was debunked, that was completely debunked, where the United States saying that, oh, they gave them the Buk missile system, they've given them other missile systems, and now we're finding out the UN has done an inspection and they have found out that no, this is not true either. Now, we understand in Ukraine things are starting to really fall apart. The economy is collapsing. Yatsenyuk is resigning. It looks like the parliament will not accept his resignation right now. They're taxing the wealthy. They're telling their people that it's going to be a very cold winter because they don't have enough gas. Prices are starting to rise. The value of their currency is falling, and right now, to pay for the war effort that's going on, Ukraine's parliament amended its tax laws to introduce a 1.5% military tax based on workers' incomes, with the goal of providing finances to raise the military capabilities of the state. It is suggested to temporarily, and every time they use the word temporarily, you know it's forever, introduce a new all-national tax, a military tax, through January 1st, 2015. Well, I guess they believe it's going to be all over by that time. This tax will be set at 1.5% from the incomes of individuals from their salaries as well as from other types of income, compensation, or other monetary awards that are transferred to the taxpayer. So we can see right now that people are totally better off than they were before. They have no heat. They have prices going up. Their currency is devalued. The country is torn apart. There are riots on the street because they don't want to go to war from the draft, and now they're being taxed for the war, and the country is completely broke. So we can see right now they are much, much better off since the coup d'etat. Now the U.S. was out there and they issued a strong condemnation on the attack on the United Nations school in Gaza, and they said this is absolutely terrible and this should have not happened. Hours later, they just spent another couple $1 million and restocked Israel's supplies of ammunition. So that was theater. That was lip service to everyone around the world saying, okay, because we understand the story now is losing traction. From videos and everything else that you can see on the web, you see they are demolishing the infrastructure of Gaza. They were trying to push the people out. They don't want them returned. And now we can see from the protests all around the world that the message is getting out that this has nothing to do with anything except demolishing and removing the Palestinians from this area. And you have to remember, they are trying to get to that natural gas and the $1.6 billion worth of oil off the coast. Hamas was making a deal with Russia, and the Israeli government would have no access to that whatsoever, so they need to remove and de-Palestine the entire area right now. And you can see by the destruction and from what they're doing, this is exactly their mission. Now, Hamas is out there, and they're demanding all militant groups take part in Cairo talks. They're saying that all Palestinian resistant groups should be included in the delegation in the Gaza Strip ceasefire in Cairo. They want them all to come together and form a unity type of government and vote on what is happening there and talk about the ceasefire. And you have to remember, Hamas said, listen, we want Russia to broker the deal here, and we can see that this might happen because we understand that the United States now with Israel saying, well, if we remove Hamas, the Islamic State might move into this territory and it might be a lot worse than just having Hamas there. The story is losing traction. What is happening in the area is disgusting. They are getting called on it now. The United Nations is looking into it. They're telling them, these are United Nations schools. These are the locations, do not bomb them, and they went ahead and they bombed them. So we can see right now it's starting to fall apart. They're looking for an out, and we'll have to see how this proceeds. Now we understand that there is a ship off the coast of Texas, and there is smuggled oil on this ship, and yesterday I reported that, it's not in the jurisdiction of the United States, so they can't go there. If the ship comes a little bit closer, we can take it, no problem. In Libya, we understand that the SEALs just jumped on the ship when the tribes tried to sell it off and sell the oil to any type of buyer. They lickety-split. They were there. But now there's another story coming out. And the U.S. State Department is saying that the sale of oil from any area in Iraq is not forbidden in the United States. So they will accept the oil. How interesting. So they have no problems whatsoever accepting this oil because the Islamic State is controlled by the U.S. government. They're siphoning the oil from Syria, bringing it down into Iraq, and then smuggling out. Now, there were other shipments of oil that there were other places that were buying it. And it looks like the names have been revealed of who purchased the oil back in May. And the U.S. government and industry sources said that Thursday that chemical company to Lond Basel, owned by billionaire Ukrainian-born Leonard Blavatnik, are the buyer of the American mysterious shipments of crude oil. So these are the smuggled oil from the Islamic State, and we see that the buyers are in Ukraine. They are buying the oil. Simply amazing. Now, it looks like the situation in Libya is getting worse, and we see France is evacuating French and British expats from Libya. Spain is evacuating their embassy staff from Libya, and the Greece now, they're helping the Chinese, and they're sailing their ships over to help remove China, Cyprus, Britain, and Malta government officials from the area. It looks like at this point the Libyan government is falling. The tribes are definitely taking over the country. They're still calling out for international help, and we're going to have to see how this plays out and what type of help is coming. Now, on another note, in Syria, now remember what I've been saying. The goal has always been the same. We went through this entire process with Syria here. They had a civil war. The United States, Israel, UK, other Arab nations, and other private Western Central Bank countries were funding this operation to overthrow Assad. That didn't work, so they had the Geneva II talk. Well, they had the chemical weapon false flag event. That didn't happen. Then they had the Geneva II talks, where their whole entire agenda was to remove Assad. That didn't pan out. Then the United States decided to remove all Syrian elected officials here inside the United States, closed the embassies, brought in the opposition, and said, now you are the new elected government. And then all of a sudden the Islamic State broke out and started moving into Iraq and stayed in Syria, saying, okay, this is our area right now, and we're going to extend the caliphate to more countries. But what's very interesting, and we have to remember, all this is being set up because they realize they're losing control of the Middle East, and they realize the drone system is not working. The tribes continually come. They're getting stronger. Libya is falling. Yemen is next. Iraq is in complete chaos. And they're using, right now, a Syrian defector with photographs to show that Assad has been torturing over 150,000 people. Congress was shocked on Thursday when Syrian defector recounted how he documented Assad's killing over 11,000 innocents. The regime of Syrian President Assad is holding 150,000 civilians in custody, all of whom are at risk of being tortured or killed by the state, the Syrian defector known as Caesar told Congress Thursday. According to a senior State Department official, his department initially asked to keep this hearing, in which Caesar displayed new photos from his trove of 55,000 images showing the torture, starvation, and death of over 11,000 civilians, closed to the public. Because of concerns of safety of the defector and his family, and also national security. I am not a politician, and I don't like politics, Caesar said through his translator. I have come to you honorably to Congress to give you a message from people of Syria. What is going on in Syria is genocidal massacre that is being led by the worst of all terrorists, President Assad. The Obama administration has proposed a new $500 million program to train and equip the FSA. We want to look away, but what we must not, said ranking Democrat Eliot Engel. This is happening right now in Syria as we speak, and we can do more to stop it. Now, didn't we hear this story once before when a nurse from Kuwait was testifying in front of Congress about all the babies in the incubators, and that turned out to be completely fabricated? The same thing is happening right now. Every single plan they used did not work. This whole thing is a complete false flag to try to maneuver a way into Syria. This is the buildup. This is how they're approaching it right now. Of course, they have all these photos. Who knows where these are from? I mean, they had pictures of babies in incubators, and then we find out that this woman wasn't a nurse. These pictures were fake. It was all planted. Everything the central bankers and the United States government does is a lie. We can't believe them in anything they say. First of all, this is not proof, just showing pictures, because this could have been from the Free Syrian Army and Al-Qaeda they were using, who tortured many, many people in Syria. Now, if the people really felt this way inside the country, why did they have such a big turnout? Why did they have a huge turnout in other countries running to the election booths to vote for Assad? Something doesn't sync up here. Something is a little wrong, and we know for a fact the agenda and the goal has always been the same, to get into Syria, and you can see the plan is starting to progress right now. They're moving it forward. We're getting closer to the fall. The economy is falling apart, and they are definitely getting ready for that special event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.